Welcome to Vaj Academy. Today, we're diving into one of the most fundamental questions in business strategy. Where do truly great strategies come from? This question haunts both business students and seasoned executives alike. You've learned all the frameworks, mastered the tools, and understood how to analyze existing strategies. But how do you actually create a strategy that transforms industries and generates exceptional value? Today's video explores the groundbreaking academic article on the origin of great strategies, published in Strategy Science in 2018, and it's by Giovanni Gavetti and Joe Porach, two heavyweights in the strategy world. This isn't just another theoretical piece. It's a collaborative effort bringing together 24 of the world's top strategy scholars to decode the DNA of strategic greatness. So, whether you're a business leader, strategy student, or entrepreneur, get ready for insights that could revolutionize how you approach strategy creation. The inspiration for this paper came from a familiar scenario. After teaching strategy courses, Gavetti and Porach would inevitably face students asking, "Professor, the course was excellent, and the tools and concepts you provided really helped me understand strategic management. But tell me, where do great strategies really come from, and how can I develop one?" This seemingly simple question reveals a crucial gap in how strategy is taught and understood. Traditional frameworks help evaluate strategies but don't fully explain how groundbreaking strategies originate. To tackle this question, Gavetti and Porach brought together 24 prominent scholars from different theoretical backgrounds to contribute their perspectives. Before diving into where great strategies come from, we need to understand what makes a strategy great in the first place. While the authors left this definition somewhat open, a common thread emerges across contributions. Great strategies create favorable asymmetries, meaningful departures from the status quo that advantage one firm over others. Consider Apple and Walmart, two incredibly successful companies with radically different strategies. Apple succeeds through high profit margins on cutting-edge products that customers willingly pay premium prices for. Walmart succeeds through operational efficiency that enables lower prices on everyday goods. Despite their differences, both represent strategic greatness by creating favorable asymmetries in their respective markets. Both broke away from conventional thinking in their industries to create unique value propositions that competitors couldn't easily replicate. The authors identify three fundamental primitives that define any market and shape the pursuit of strategic greatness. 1. Material technologies and their embedded routines. Markets are built on technologies and routines that become increasingly stable and path-dependent over time. These create both constraints and opportunities for strategic innovation. Several contributors emphasize how these material realities create a rugged fitness landscape that firms must navigate. Leventhal describes how firms typically engage in local optimization, climbing nearby peaks of performance rather than jumping to distant ones. The complexity of these landscapes often exceeds managers' cognitive capabilities, making firms reactive rather than proactive. This explains why initial conditions matter so much. Where you start largely determines where you can go. As Podolny notes, great strategies often emerge when strategists refuse to accept local trade-offs that others see as inevitable, continuing to search for superior possibilities beyond the immediate landscape. Walmart's logistics and supply chain systems represent material technologies that became increasingly refined over decades. These systems created path dependencies that were difficult for competitors to replicate, but also constrained Walmart's own ability to pivot to entirely new business models. 2. Cognitive representations. The second primitive involves how strategists mentally represent their competitive environment. Markets aren't just material realities. They're also subjective fields characterized by shared meanings and knowledge. This cognitive dimension includes conceptions of firm identity. What kind of company are we? Theories of value generation. What kind of business model works here? Market relationships. Who are our competitors and customers? And status orderings. How do we compare with competitors? Contributors differ on whether the strategic mind should be viewed as a generative organ capable of autonomous imagination or as a camera that captures external reality. Phelan and Zenger argue that our environment contains infinite possibilities that remain dormant until activated by a strategist's theory of value. Schilling identifies three cognitive operations that underpin great strategies: abstracting essential characteristics, pursuing unconstrained ideals, and following causal logic further than competitors. Steve Jobs didn't see Apple as just a computer company, but as a creator of beautifully designed products that transform how people interact with technology. This cognitive representation allowed Apple to move beyond computers into music players, phones, and watches, categories that seemed unrelated to traditional computer manufacturers. 3. Values and valuations. The third primitive concerns what actors in a market value and how they assign worth to products, services, and experiences. Yemawat and De Figueiredo highlight how value systems within firms can either constrain or enable strategic innovation. They note that Steve Jobs' emphasis on insanely great products created a value system at Apple that prioritized product excellence over immediate financial returns. Powell extends this by arguing that great strategies often involve redefining what is valuable in a market, changing the very metrics by which success is measured. This valuation work can transform industries by shifting attention to previously undervalued attributes or entirely new dimensions of performance. Airbnb succeeded not just by offering cheaper accommodations, but by redefining what travelers value: authentic local experiences rather than standardized hotel rooms. This valuation shift created an entirely new category of travel experience that traditional hotels struggled to match. Based on these three primitives, the authors identify three distinct paths to developing great strategies. 1. The path of position superior foresight. The first path involves superior foresight, seeing opportunities in the existing landscape that others miss. This approach is particularly relevant when material technologies are changing rapidly, but cognitive representations and values remain relatively stable. Bird and Soda describe how structural holes in networks create information advantages that allow strategists to see opportunities others miss. Those who bridge disconnected groups gain access to diverse information and novel ideas that can form the basis for strategic innovation. Eisenhart and Bingham emphasize the importance of simple rules for navigating complex, fast-moving environments. Rather than detailed plans, great strategists develop heuristics that focus attention on key opportunities while maintaining flexibility. Amazon's Jeff Bezos foresaw the potential of e-commerce long before most retailers. His famous regret minimization framework led him to recognize that the internet would transform retail, even when the immediate evidence was limited. This foresight allowed Amazon to establish dominant positions in multiple markets before competitors could react. 2. The path of discovery, superior learning. The second path involves superior learning, discovering new possibilities through experimentation and adaptation. This path becomes critical when both material technologies and cognitive representations are changing, creating uncertainty about where value lies. Leventhal describes how Mendelian CEOs create organizational contexts that encourage cheap, meaningful experiments. These leaders distinguish themselves not through heroic vision, but by fostering variation and implementing effective selection mechanisms. Ocasio and Joseph argue that great strategies emerge through evolutionary processes where ideas become part of focused strategic agendas. The key is not necessarily having brilliant initial ideas, but effectively managing the attention structures that allow promising ideas to develop and gain organizational support. Google's famous 20% time policy allowed employees to spend 1/5 of their work time on projects of personal interest. This experimental approach led to the development of Gmail, Google Maps, and numerous other successful products. The company's ability to select promising experiments and scale them effectively was as important as the initial creative freedom. 3. The path of imagination. Superior reframing. The third path involves superior imagination, reframing the competitive landscape to create entirely new possibilities. This approach is powerful when cognitive representations and values are malleable, even if material technologies remain relatively fixed. Brandenburger describes how strategists can look beyond the existing game to envision fundamentally different competitive dynamics. Rather than accepting industry conventions, they reimagine how value could be created and captured. Rindava and Martins argue that great strategies often involve playful imagination, combining existing elements in novel ways that transcend established categories and create new market spaces. This creative recombination allows firms to escape competitive pressures by defining entirely new games. Netflix originally competed with Blockbuster as a DVD by mail service, but its true strategic breakthrough came when it reframed entertainment as a streaming subscription service rather than a rental transaction. This cognitive reframing created an entirely new business model that traditional video rental companies couldn't adapt to quickly enough. Another useful framework that emerges from the contributions is what we might call the deepening, extending, replacing model of strategic innovation. This approach involves intensifying focus on what you already do well, finding hidden value in existing activities. Apple under Steve Jobs exemplifies this approach, obsessing over details like material quality and user interface to create products that stand apart from competitors. When Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he didn't immediately create new product categories. Instead, he focused on perfecting the Mac, stripping away complexity and focusing on elegant design and superior user experience. This deepening approach laid the foundation for Apple's later category-creating innovations. The extending approach involves taking existing strengths and applying them to new markets or problems. Walmart's extension from rural markets to global operations and Apple's move from computers to consumer electronics exemplify this approach. Amazon extended its expertise in e-commerce infrastructure to create Amazon Web Services, AWS, applying its technological capabilities to an entirely different market. Today, AWS generates more profit than Amazon's retail operations, despite being a later addition to the company's portfolio. The most radical approach involves replacing the fundamental assumptions of an industry. Steve Jobs' visit to Xerox PARC in 1979, where he saw the graphical user interface that would transform personal computing, represents this approach. Tesla didn't just create a better electric car, it reimagined the entire automotive experience from purchasing, direct to consumer, to ownership, over-the-air updates, to energy infrastructure, supercharger network. This comprehensive replacement of automotive industry assumptions has made it difficult for traditional manufacturers to respond effectively. Based on these insights, how might you develop your own great strategy? The authors suggest several practical approaches. 1. Analyze your starting position. Understanding your initial position on the competitive landscape is crucial. What material technologies, cognitive representations, and value systems currently define your market? What constraints do these impose, and what opportunities might they create? Map your industry's taken-for-granted assumptions across technologies, mental models, and values. Identify which elements are truly fixed and which might be more malleable than they appear. 2. Cultivate multiple perspectives. Great strategies often emerge from seeing the world differently. Deliberately expose yourself to diverse viewpoints, bridge structural holes in your network, and question industry orthodoxies. Create a shadow board of advisors from completely different industries or backgrounds. Ask them how they would approach your strategic challenges without industry preconceptions. 3. Design strategic experiments. Rather than betting everything on a single vision, design small experiments that test key assumptions about where value might lie. Create organizational contexts that encourage meaningful variation and effective selection. Allocate 5 to 10% of your resources to experiments that challenge core assumptions. Ensure these experiments have clear success metrics but are protected from short-term performance pressures. 4. Practice reframing. Regularly challenge your mental models by asking, what if the industry were defined differently? What if customers valued different attributes? What if traditional trade-offs weren't necessary? Hold quarterly reimagining sessions where your team deliberately questions fundamental industry assumptions. Use techniques like first principles thinking to break down complex problems to their most basic elements. 5. Attend to values and valuations. Consider how you might redefine what's valuable in your market. Could you shift attention to previously undervalued attributes or create entirely new metrics of success? Interview customers about their jobs to be done, rather than their product preferences. Look for unspoken needs or frustrations that might reveal entirely new value dimensions. The authors suggest several key roles that strategists play in developing great strategies. In complex, uncertain environments, strategists must navigate rugged landscapes by balancing local optimization with more distant exploration. This requires developing what Gemawat calls depth perception, the ability to see both immediate opportunities and longer-term possibilities. Great strategists create context for meaningful experimentation. As Leventhal argues, this doesn't necessarily require massive investments, but rather thoughtful design of low-cost experiments that test key assumptions and generate useful learning. Perhaps most powerfully, strategists can reframe competitive situations by challenging conventional cognitive representations. This involves questioning industry recipes, reimagining customer needs, and envisioning entirely new value propositions. Let's examine how these principles have played out in several notable examples. Apple's iPhone revolution. When Apple introduced the iPhone in 2007, it wasn't just creating a better phone, it was redefining what a phone could be. This strategic breakthrough combined all three primitives. In material technology, Apple integrated multiple technologies, touchscreen, internet connectivity, sensors, in novel ways. Cognitive representation. Jobs reimagined the phone as a general-purpose computing platform rather than just a communication device. Values and valuations. Apple shifted consumer attention from technical specifications to user experience and design. The iPhone's success came from Apple's ability to see beyond the conventional smartphone category, BlackBerry, Nokia, to create an entirely new product category that redefined consumer expectations. Walmart's rural strategy. Sam Walton's original strategic insight was recognizing the untapped potential of rural markets that larger retailers ignored. This strategy leveraged material technology. Walmart developed logistics systems specifically designed for serving dispersed rural locations efficiently. Cognitive representation. While competitors saw rural markets as unprofitable, Walton saw them as underserved opportunities. Values and valuations. Walmart aligned its value system with rural communities, emphasizing affordability and community connection. By the time competitors recognized the opportunity, Walmart had built material advantages, distribution centers, store locations that were difficult to overcome. Airbnb's home-sharing revolution. Airbnb transformed the hospitality industry by enabling people to rent out their homes to travelers. This strategy exemplifies material technology. Airbnb leveraged existing assets, people's homes, and digital technology to create a new accommodation platform. Cognitive representation. The founders reimagined strangers' homes as desirable accommodations rather than risky alternatives to hotels. Values and valuations. Airbnb shifted traveler values from standardization and amenities toward authenticity and local experiences. By reframing the hospitality experience, Airbnb created a market category that traditional hotel chains struggled to enter effectively. The authors also highlight several common mistakes that can derail the development of great strategies. Mistaking operational excellence for strategic innovation. Many companies focus on doing existing things better rather than questioning whether they're doing the right things. While operational improvements are valuable, they rarely lead to transformative strategic advantages. Over-relying on industry consensus. Great strategies often involve seeing possibilities that others miss or reject. Following industry conventional wisdom may lead to competent performance, but rarely to strategic greatness. Confusing strategic positioning with strategic innovation. Finding a favorable position within an existing market structure is different from redefining that structure. Truly great strategies often do the latter. Neglecting implementation and attention management. As Ocasio and Joseph emphasize, even brilliant strategic ideas fail without effective implementation and sustained organizational attention. Conclusion: the ongoing quest for strategic greatness. The quest for strategic greatness isn't about finding a single formula or framework. Instead, it's about understanding the complex interplay between material technologies, cognitive representations, and values that define market orders, and then finding ways to create favorable asymmetries within or beyond those orders. Whether through superior foresight, superior learning, or superior imagination, great strategies ultimately involve meaningful departures from the status quo that create sustainable competitive advantage. By understanding these different paths to greatness, strategists can more deliberately navigate their own journey toward exceptional performance. As we've seen through examples like Apple and Walmart, strategic greatness can take many forms. The key is not to imitate others' strategies, but to develop your own approach that creates unique value in your specific context. The next time you find yourself asking, where do great strategies come from? Remember that the answer lies not in any single perspective, but in the rich interplay between material realities, cognitive possibilities, and evolving values. By embracing this complexity rather than seeking simplistic answers, you'll be well on your way to developing your own path to strategic greatness. Thank you for joining us at Vaj Academy today. If you found this exploration of strategic greatness valuable, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep thinking strategically.